So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the security tools for internet safety. Now, it's very, very easy to talk about these things at a high level and leave people thinking, thinking that it's complicated. Some of it is, but actually, I'll go a little bit deeper and try and explain some things to make some degree of sense about it. So what I'm going to talk about, first of all, is secure passwords, which was nicely keyed in, thank you very much, when we're talking about passwords and saving passwords, and the best way to do it, which is using password managers. And I'll describe what they are, how they work. And I've done a quick bit of research, and a couple of the websites that I track all the time, they list the best of this and the best of that at present, things like antivirus and security tools and so on. And I will actually give you the names of the products that they have recommended for this year, because it's a competitive market, and what's good this year might still be good next year, but something better might have come along. So we'll look at password managers. We'll then look at antivirus systems and what they are, why you should or should not have one, what the benefits are, what you need to think about with public Wi-Fi, and we'll talk about that in a bit of detail, and then VPNs. If you know what a VPN is, great. That makes you part of about 8% of the IT population. By the end of it, you might have got a little bit of a handle on what a VPN is and if or when you should be considering using one. And then I'll summarize it. And after that, if you've got any questions, fire them away. If you know how to use the chat function in Zoom, and I don't know where it is on your screen, but there is a chat icon. You can type your questions as you go, and you can then ask me, and hopefully I'll be able to give you answers to most of them. So in the beginning, before we start what we're going to talk about, analogy time. If you know me, you know that I like analogies. Driving is absolutely wonderful. I love driving. Give me an excuse and I will drive anywhere. I've got an electric car. I'm not spitting out CO2 and pollution as I drive. So for me, driving is wonderful, dirt cheap, and no pollutants. The internet is wonderful. It gives you the opportunity to drive all over the world. One of the websites I like is a website called HeyGo, and what happens is across the world, there are tour guides who have no tourists. So they've signed up to HeyGo, and you can get walked through Petra. You can get walked through major gardens. I watched a guide who was giving us a guided tour through part of Pompeii. All of that from the comfort of my seat. And if you like the talk, you can tip the guide. So you give the guy 5 or 10 euros or whatever. And if otherwise it's free. So you get a chance to see all the places that you can't safely get to at the moment for nothing. The internet is amazing. And we all know that to keep safe on the road, we've got to follow the rules of the road. What is legal in one country is totally illegal in another. The concept of doing a right turn on a red light, in the UK, that's 3 points in your license and on a fine, and in Florida, that's mandatory. So knowing the rules of the road for where you are is important. I just wish a few more drivers would follow them. If you ignore the driving safety rules, the consequences can be quite dramatic. If you ignore the internet safety rules, the consequences can be quite dramatic. So knowing what the rules are makes it safe. And just as anyone can jump in a car and drive, it doesn't mean they can drive safely. Just because you can jump on a computer and use it doesn't mean you're doing it safely. So let's start off with secure passwords. First rule, you don't want a password somebody can guess, because if they can guess it, they can use it. And if they use it, they're not using it for your benefit. Passwords. Now, this table I have copied from somewhere else and it hasn't come in particularly well. But if you have a short password, say it's a number 1234, as you can see in the top left, that can be cracked instantly using what's called a brute force. So basically, there are programs out there, there are hundreds of programs out there that will take your email address or username and try and crack into websites. You can make them more complicated by using upper and lower case and symbols and so on, but if it's still 4 characters long, it still can be instantly cracked. If you get longer passwords and you do more complicated things, you will see, particularly in the right-hand column, when you got to to 18 characters of random letters and numbers, it will take 7 quadrillion years for that to be brute force hacked. Given my age, even the thought of 2 million years is improbable. Who's going to want to hack a 2 million year old online banking for me when the banks won't exist anymore? So making a password complicated makes it safer. How many of you could remember an 18-character string of numbers, letters, symbols, and all the rest of it, with a different one for each website? The answer is maybe 1 or 2 people in the whole globe might have that kind of memory. So we have the safety end is directly contradictory to human memory. It's actually almost impossible to achieve. So how do you keep these things secret? Well, first of all, rule 1, you never, ever, ever use the same password on 2 sites. A password should be unique to that site, and just to keep things exciting, you should be changing it as and when, particularly if that site gets hacked. We've all heard of the big hacks. Was it Booking.com got hacked and EasyJet got hacked? And as soon as usernames and passwords are hacked, you've got to change. Now, I use an iPhone. I don't know how it works with any other tablets or phones. I just know the Apple ecosystem. And if I go into the password manager, which is built into my phone, it actually warns me if any of the passwords that I am using have been hacked. In other words, it had appeared on a site which has been hacked. Apple check it and flag it and say, Colin, change this password. And I touch the button next to it, and Apple go through some magic and actually help me to Katie, could you admit that person, please? I don't have the control, so I can't. Trying to admit somebody. Oh,
I've already admitted them.
Right, thank you. So, taking the example, there are 4 passwords that I could put into a password manager. The first one, which is the name of the son of our neighbours, could be hacked in a second, particularly if you know anything about me or them, or if you use your dog's name or anything like that. Stick a couple of numbers on the back of it, and it can be hacked very quickly. If you put something like strangers in the night and you remember how you misspelled it, it's a lot longer to hack. It's obviously still strangers in the night, but it's more difficult. The one at the bottom, the password manager created one, is a password that was generated by the password manager built into my phone, and I immediately changed it. I copied the password, put it up on this talk and then told my iPhone to go through the loop of creating a new password and updating it on the website. But the chances of you guessing that are pretty remote. The chances of you remembering it are equally remote. So you need a thing called a password manager. So let's look at password managers. If, like me, you're an Apple user, it's actually dead simple because it's built into Apple's iCloud. And if I generate a password on my MacBook, which is what I'm giving this presentation on, within a couple of seconds, it's also on my iPhone and my iPad, because Apple manage all that across all my devices. So although it's still complicated, and in the one-to-one sessions that we are now back to giving in Nicholson Square, I'm able to help people to do that and show them where it is. And everyone says, I didn't know that was there. And that's the typical thing, you know, that I would reckon 2/3 of the questions that we get asked in those sessions are things where people say, oh, I wish computers could do this. And you say, press that button, and there it is. It's not that people are stupid. It's just that there are so many things built into your Samsung, your Apple, or whatever device you've got that people just don't know. Somebody asked me, you know, you must know all about your iPhone. No, if I'm lucky, I know 20% of it, but the 20% is what I use, and I know where to go nosing for the other 80%. There are a lot of good commercial password managers, and they all have slightly different business models. Some of them, and I'm not going to point to any of them, the one that comes up first is the one that was recommended by the website I use. Some of them will allow you to have all your passwords for one device managed. So if you're only using a laptop or a tablet or a phone, and that's all you ever use, there is no charge. But if you want to have it on two devices, your laptop and your phone, or any two devices, or sometimes it's just all devices, then you've got to pay. Now, the paying is not that expensive, and it's like any insurance policy. If you pay a little bit, you're actually removing the risk of, you know, of bad things happening and having the good things done for you. LastPass is another one that's very, very popular. And I know a lot of people who use it and won't use anything else. NordPass is a new one, and you will see the name again, Nord, because they also do a VPN, and it's a VPN that I'm about to move to. They're a company that have really, you know, come into the market very strongly. And then the one that a lot of people know about, 1Password, because they were really the first of the password managers to come into the market, and they are all as good as each other. There might be slight benefits of one over the other. Have a look at the four of them, and if you don't like the idea of them, then don't touch them. But equally, I would say, and going back to the questions that we were talking about before the session itself, it's well worth getting a password manager and using it, because your eBay password and your password to the museums and your password to this, that, and the next thing, when you're booking your flights or your trains or your car hire, or you're going into your insurance policy, you do not want that information to be at risk of being hacked. Get them to generate a complicated password for you the first time you go into a website. What they typically do, they all work a little bit differently, but what will typically happen is that you'll key in the username. When you go into the password box, it will say, do you want us to generate a password? I am suggesting this password for you. And you look at it and it's complicated, and you say yes and save. it does it, it puts the password, you know, very often you get enter the new password twice. It will put that new password it's recommending in on both of those lines. And if you say yes and save, it's locked away. And now the only password you have to remember, and you do have to remember, is the password to go into your password manager so you can manage it. All the rest of the passwords, it's doing the magic for you. I like that idea of having a computer do the hard work for me. That's just my mindset. So it's actually loads simpler, because it means that you don't have a bundle of Post-it notes stuck on the fridge. You don't have the password book. And I kid you not, I would reckon that on an average month, I must see 3 or 4 people who have got a book of passwords, and with loads of scorings out, because they've got to keep on changing the passwords. And you look at the passwords and I could guess that. Some of them are just so obvious. They're variations on a name and that or with a number after it. Too easy. By using a password manager, you get away from that. You don't need to record the changes either, because at a point in time, you can just get the password manager to change the password, and they all work slightly differently. But some of them you actually go into the password manager and say, for that website, I want to change the password. And the password manager will open the website for you and take you to the bit where you can select account, password, change password, or whatever it is. Some of them that can actually take you to that page directly, and it will fill in your current password where it's needed and then suggest a new password. So in half a dozen clicks, you've done it, and you're away from the complication of having to score out and remember what the new password is. It's done it. And some of these password managers will warn you if you're using the same password in more than one website, or if the password you are using for a website has been hacked. So it's saying you should change this. It's giving you that useful information. And back to what I said a minute ago, let's let the computer do the hard work. Providing information, providing advice, storing data, that's what they're for. Let's let the password manager do the hard stuff. So that's passwords. I hope that's answered the question that we started off with. It was actually quite good of you to pick up the cue and give me the question to start. So we're moving on now to the next of the subtopics, and that is antivirus. So let's just understand what antivirus is. What is a virus? Well, I took a definition from one of the technical publications. A computer virus, much like a flu virus, and don't we know about viruses these days, is designed to spread from host to host and has the ability to replicate itself. Similarly, in the same way that viruses cannot reproduce without a host cell, computer viruses cannot reproduce and spread without programming, such as a file or document. So a virus cannot magically insert itself into your computer to an extent. It's got to be attached to something. When I was working, I always ran highly powerful antivirus software. These days, I use a lower power one because I'm less at risk. But I would regularly be getting documents or emails from local authority clients or public sector clients, and the antivirus would just say, deleting that, it's got a virus, can't do anything about it, it's got a nasty, because local authorities and public sector bodies maybe did not have the same antivirus control I had. And it was always the same. It was attached to a Microsoft Word document or an Excel document or a PDF file. And that's why a lot of what Adobe is doing has had to move away from, from that side of things, because they were actually producing software that was not as secure as it could be. So that's what a virus is. An antivirus program is a piece of software that you install. Some of them are free. And I use a free one on my MacBook, and I've got a big iMac that I use when I'm doing video and photo work, and I've got a different free antivirus on it because it's, having two guns, just in case one of them lets something slip through, the other antivirus will catch it. But that's a very unusual situation. Most people only have one device. You have a program, and what that program does is it will just keep an eye every time you are bringing that file in from anywhere, an email, a PDF file, a book, anything. It has a quick look at it and goes through it and checks that it's virus free. It does have an impact on the performance of your computer. And I would defy anyone to notice it, because even phones these days are so fast that by the time it has gone through and done a virus scan on whatever it is that you've downloaded, it's happened so fast that it will be there before you're able to react. It's virtually instantaneous. Everything gets read and scanned, and depending upon your device, if it's a laptop or a desktop, they can also do what's called a periodic scan. And what I used to do was I used to say, well, okay, I'm having my lunch at 1 o'clock every day. Therefore, at 1 o'clock every day, the antivirus would wake up and scan everything, scan the machine from top to bottom, to make sure that nothing has sneaked in behind my back, or that nothing had sneaked in a few days ago and wakened up, which some of these guys writing viruses are pretty astute. But no antivirus program is 100% effective. What that means is that you've got to be careful. Don't just download things. If some website says you've got to download this, or you've got suddenly your version of Adobe Reader or Microsoft Word or WhatsApp, oh boy, have they had problems. Your version of something is out of date, you need to update it immediately. In the words of Chewing the Fat, gonna no do that. Just no. You've got to have enough understanding to know that sometimes these pop-up windows are coming from the very people you're trying to keep out. So you are part of the antivirus strategy as much as the antivirus program itself is. So what are the best antivirus programs at present? And again, I'm just taking it from one of the websites that I use. In this case, I'm using TechRadar. I would suggest that if you're not techie, don't go anywhere near TechRadar, because it's for people like me. But the three that they are recommending are Bitdefender, Norton, and Kaspersky. Now, a regular that we used to see was a program called AVG, but there have been increasing flags raised about them and their links to Russian intelligence services, which they have denied. But then again, you'd expect them to deny it. They're not going to say, oh yes, we're actually sending your data to Russia. But guess what? They have been caught sending your data to Russia. So I would suggest not AVG for the moment until the rumors are completely quashed. Those three are good antivirus programs. There are free versions that do most of the job, but if you want to, if you want to be completely locked down, pay a little bit. All I can say is I'm a Mac user, not a Windows user, but I use 2 free antivirus tools, and that so far as I know, I've not had any nasties on my system for a long time. So it's essential to have antivirus programs. Well, if you're running a laptop or a desktop, even if it's a Mac or Windows or Linux, whatever you're running, I would say, yes, absolutely, you do need to have some sort of antivirus tool running, even a free one, just because it gives you that extra bit of coverage. If you're using a tablet or a phone, I've got an iPad and an iPhone, and I am neurotic about security, as Katie will tell you, but I don't have antivirus on either of those. If you've got other devices from Huawei or Samsung or Google or whatever, it would do no harm to have a simple antivirus program, maybe free, maybe not. Maybe you can get a deal where you pay a little bit each month and your laptop and your phone are both covered in the same license. But I would say yes, just a little bit of common sense. And the more you are doing on your tablet or phone, the more logical benefit there is from you from having that little bit of protection. The next topic, public Wi-Fi. Now, I'm going to walk through this nice and slowly so that you get a bit of an understanding on it. Public Wi-Fi is absolutely brilliant. You go on any bus in Edinburgh and you've got bus Wi-Fi. You go to Starbucks and you've got it there. There are parts of Princes Street where there is what they call metropolitan Wi-Fi, and in this you can pick up basically Wi-Fi paid for by the city of Edinburgh, so that it allows you to do a lot of things, and you can then access most sites, not all sites, because they all block different sites, and you can understand the sites that they are trying to block because they don't want people to be accessing them, and they are ubiquitous. I used to travel a lot on ScotRail and Virgin and all these train companies, and there was train Wi-Fi. Oh, it was so slow, but it was there. And there's loads of benefits. You can keep in touch on Facebook or Twitter and check your emails and all the rest of it. You can do it all wherever you are. It's great. But there's also a risk. Inevitably, there's a risk, because if there's no password to log in, anybody can log in. And if you get somebody who's got malicious intent, as soon as you're on the net, they might be having a look at the very least, what you're sending and receiving, because they can, if it's going through the air from you to a receiver, what's to stop somebody in the middle also receiving those signals and copying them? If there's no password, then that's dead easy. But you go to, and there was a series of articles that I read about cafes, was it Portugal or Spain? But a couple of cafes that were actually caught copying all the traffic that people were putting through on their Wi-Fi. Why? I don't know, but if the owner of the Wi-Fi can copy it, is it secure? Make up your own mind. What about other users? Can they also capture that traffic and listen to it? can they copy your login data and the password? If you have so carefully got a secure password, but somebody is sitting copying that data, there's a risk that free Wi-Fi actually is helping you to throw away your security. And can they do anything else, depending upon your device? And it used to be a game. I mean, it's not as easy now, but there was a guy we used to work with in the office, and he was one of these people you like winding up. And we discovered how we could send prompt messages to his laptop across the office using the office Wi-Fi, warning him of things about to happen because the messaging system wasn't secure. Nobody worked out who it was. I don't work there anymore. I'm not telling you the company name so they can't come after me. But we used to make that poor guy's life a misery. But that was a joke. Some of what people can do on your device, if you're not cautious, are a little bit less than funny, because there is always the risk that public Wi-Fi, you're opening your device up to other people. Now, here's where it starts, and we're sort of bleeding a wee bit into next week's talk on online banking. If you're using an app, it's better than browsing. We'll take an example. If I'm going to be shopping on Amazon, which I do a fair bit, I would use the Amazon Prime on the Amazon app rather on public Wi-Fi reasonably happily, because they have got their own encryption. Now we'll come back to what that is in a minute, because they are managing the connection end to end, and it's difficult to crack into because there is some encryption. Equally with the banks, equally with the eBay app. If I was in public Wi-Fi, there is no way I would go on to the Amazon or eBay websites. I just wouldn't, unless, and the unless will come to. The best way to do it is to use what's called a virtual private network, or VPN. And we're going to talk about that for a couple of minutes. I will, at its simplest, what a VPN is a way to protect yourself when you're not at home, when you're out traveling. So what is a VPN and how does encryption work? Well, let's go back to the beginning, as I'm prone to do, and we'll work forward to where it takes us for the moment. I don't know about you folk, but what we sometimes did, we would code messages, see you at the gang hut at 4 o'clock, and would have a code where A was replaced by B and B was replaced by C, and we'd write these messages, and that was the plain text. And then using the key that A is B and B is C, it was encrypted then into the message that you gave to your friend, and they would then be able to decode it. And the whole point then is, if you know the key, you know the message. And this was going right back in your history. Armies right the way back to the armies of China when they were facing Genghis Khan, right back to, in fact, there is some evidence that right back in the city of Ur, which was the first place that language was actually written down, there is some evidence that they were using some sort of cryptographic messaging so that they could write to each other. Having only just invented writing, they realized other people could read that, and they were using some sort of ciphers. So knowing the key, you know the message. But if everyone knows the key, it's not actually that much of a secret, because everyone can read it anyway. So the answer was a unique key. A very good example of a unique key was the Enigma machine, which you've probably all heard about. And the Enigma machine was brilliant because all of the the German army and the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, they used Enigma to pass messages back and forward. The German Navy used Enigma, but they used a different coding system, but we'll just leave that to the side. And Enigma was great because at midnight every day, the code changed. And in those days, it would have taken days to decode it. So if it's changing every day, the chances of the Allies being able to understand what these communiques were almost nil. Except every morning at at first light, the weather reports would come in from various stations to the German High Command. And those weather reports were in a standard format. And once you realized that that's what they were, you were very quickly, well, not very quickly, it took the power of Colossus and some absolutely brilliant people, but they were able then to realize, well, okay, if this is the weather forecast and we know what the weather is there anyway, we can make a good stab at decoding it. And that's how Enigma got broken. And also the fact that most of the communiques between German stations ended with the letters HH for Heil Hitler. So that if you could get that, you could also start to decrypt it. So Enigma changing every day got broken in the end because there were inherent flaws in the way they worked. So computers lock every session. With good encryption, if you have your home banking app and you're using it, the encryption key that it uses to send your username, your password, your identity, what the information is, it will change every time you stop using it. And if you use it for a long time, it will time out and generate a new key, and you'll never even notice it because they keep on changing it to cover your back. So, what is a virtual private network? Long ago and far away, well, not that long ago, because I helped a lot of people install them. What used to happen was if you had two offices, you would buy an expensive, and I mean expensive, tens of thousands of pounds 15, 20 years ago, connection between those two offices. And you would get BT or whoever to lay a cable specifically for you between your two offices in order to run your traffic, to keep it secure, quite separate from the main network. Very expensive to buy, complicated to maintain, annual charges through the roof. And then the internet came along and people were saying, why are we paying £20,000 a year to BT when we can send the same data across the internet for effectively free? Well, the answer is, of course, you can't, because it's not secure. So some bright spark, and I did come across the guy's name, but what he did was he said, well, why don't we just have very complicated security and create what's called a tunnel between here and there, so that even though the data is going through the public internet, nobody can crack it because the data is all going encrypted, it's in code. And then every so often you just change the code and the two ends agree on what the new code is going to be. So all of a sudden we're saving a fortune in costs and we're more secure because nobody can hack into it. So the way it works is that you send all your data on a VPN. Now, it's even cleverer because everything is encrypted and nobody knows where you are. Because one of the other things is finding out where you are. If you're using a VPN, actually, you can be in different places. And this is quite useful, for instance, if you are having to buy something, from somewhere. for instance, if I'm abroad and I want to order something on Amazon, Amazon are going to try and send me to an address, you know, they want a Spanish address because they know I'm in Spain. So I just, on the VPN, say I'm back home, and Amazon, I don't have to fight Amazon to tell them to deliver to my home address. Your location is hidden. You probably don't need a VPN if you're at home. If you're only at home and you're only using your laptop or your tablet or whatever in your home address, you maybe don't need it. Then again, if I'm doing certain operations, particularly financial operations, I will sometimes just flip my VPN on and pretend I'm in Belgium or Glasgow. Not that I'd want to be to Glasgow. Belgium, I don't mind. Sorry, that's an Edinburgh person. But I can just change the location I'm at and it completely hides it. So that even then there are benefits. So is a VPN a good idea? Well, yes, it is, with the same caveats as before. A free VPN costs money to run. All VPNs cost money to run, because what they've got to do is they've got to have a software team who are managing the software, who are making sure of encryption. They've got to run servers in probably several countries, and they've got to be able to cover all those costs. If, therefore, somebody is selling you a free VPN, where are they making the money? And the answer is that many of them, not all, because some of them are run by companies who've got antivirus or whatever other products, and they're using it as an add-on to keep you committed to working with them and to keep you renewing your antivirus. But some of them are actually scammers. So it's like anything else. You don't go to a website that's, you know, hokey-cokey-cheap-fridges.com and expect to get a real fridge. What you will do is just lose some money. There is no such thing as anything being completely free. And as long as you start thinking about that, you've got a good chance then of working out, you know, who's genuine and who's not. But the answer with a VPN is it's worth paying a bit for a good one, because pay a little bit now is cutting the risk of having to pay more. And my VPN, bingo, that's how quick I went from being in Edinburgh to being in France. I could be in the US. And if you're thinking that would allow me to watch American Netflix on my subscription and therefore watch all the movies that they don't permit to happen in the UK, I could not possibly comment. So in summary, security is seriously important. And I would argue that good passwords are critical, unique to every website. And a password manager is a very, very good way of managing your passwords. There are other ways, but good password managers, and you've seen some names from the, you know, I'm not recommending them, I just passed forward the names that were recommended to me. But it does make life a lot easier. Antivirus software, again, often very, very useful. And I've given you my thinking on it, but having something that's covering your back from viruses coming in is a good idea. VPNs, well, it is a new idea. If you've not heard of it, and most of you probably haven't, you probably never even thought about it. But when you do think about it, the comfort and control it gives you actually gives you a lot of benefits. If you're at home, maybe you don't need a VPN. But if you're going to be taking your phone or your tablet or whatever, being able to go on the bus and to flip the VPN on and then do what you've got to do on it, or just chat on Facebook, and know that what you're doing is completely secure, because your traffic is not leaving your phone without being encrypted. It's encrypted. It then goes to, when I flip my VPN to going to France, the traffic actually goes across the internet to France, gets decrypted there, and then comes back out onto the internet. And I've got to remember to switch it off, otherwise various websites will suddenly start being in French rather than English. So I've just got to use a bit of common sense. But it might be a new idea to you, but actually it's an extra layer of protection. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second, and we'll pick the questions up, and I will leave it to Katie to run me through them.
This is